That all starts out with meeting people personally. And when I started my work with this Dutch band, we had some funding and there was a budget for me to travel as well. So I would go to events like Jazz Ahead. I would go to festivals where I knew a lot of promoters would be. Whenever the band played, I would always go with them. That's of course always also a way to get to know people and places. And then you build on that. I'm Danielle Oosterop. I live in Amsterdam. I run my own booking agency for 10 years now. I would say I'm an agent, but it's a bit diffuse whether to call myself an agent or a manager. I've been working in music for 20 years. The first 10 years I was working for a company, for a Dutch musician named Michiel Braam. And I was managing the company he had, so doing all the work involved. That was my introduction to the jazz scene. As a professional in the jazz scene. Before that, the way I got into this whole scene was because I would go to Bimhuis a lot, know a lot of musicians, and was asked to do this work. So that's how it all started. And after 10 years I wanted to do something else, be a bit more ambitious, do some other work for some other musicians, which was not really possible to combine with this work for the Dutch piano player. So then I started my own company. And I still work by myself after all those years, which is what I prefer to do. It gives me most flexibility and independence. And not too much responsibility for other people's salaries. There has been a bit of a change in the last year. I think the corona mixed up some stuff. But mainly I've been working with musicians from Sweden and Norway. The first band I started working with was trio The Thing, Mats Gustafsson, Paal Nilssen and Ingebrigt Hakeflaten. And after that I worked with them for different projects. The collaboration with Mats stopped last year, but I still work with Paal and Ingebrigt on new groups they have. I work with Nate Woolley, trumpet player from New York. I do one international quartet by Rodrigo Amado from Portugal. There's a Swedish band called Angles 9. And there's, since very recently, not even a week, I started working with Julien Desprez for his trio Abakashi. I think that's it. It's usually a matter of, first of all, I know them personally. The personal relationship is important. Then of course I have to like the music. I don't really approach musicians, they usually approach me. There are not too many people doing what I do, so there are a lot of musicians looking for agents. So I get a lot of requests. And most of the time I have to say no, of course, which I find difficult to do, but which is necessary. Because if you end up working with someone because you like the person, but you don't really like his music, then that doesn't work. I found out the hard way. For me, that doesn't work. That's just the way I work. It usually starts with establishing a tour period with the artist, because in this scene, in this improvised music scene, musicians have a whole lot of different projects. So to get, say, if you want to tour a quintet, to get all those 5 people together, usually there's only maybe 2 weeks a year that you can actually all get them. So that's the time period you have to work with. And then you start, first of all, say a year in advance, you start looking for key gigs. So I start looking for festivals in that period of time, start to write to them, or venues that you think they might fit that program long in advance. And you slowly build on that, which takes as long as maybe a month before the tour even, because there are always venues that book very late. That's the way it usually goes. The better way would be if a festival approaches me for a band on my roster because they saw it on my website or because they read it in a newsletter I sometimes send out. And when that's the anchor, then you can try to build a tour around that. I definitely try to take that into account. Actually, I always have been trying to not fly too much, take trains when possible, because not only because of environmental reasons, but just because I think it's more comfortable. It's not cheaper, unfortunately, but it's more comfortable for musicians. So you always try to book a tour within train distance. It's very difficult. You need flexibility of venues, which usually does not exist. Venue A only books on a Tuesday, another only on Saturday. There's only one date available, so you end up flying all over the place if you're not careful. Especially when you're working when you can't be too picky. Now I think I'm in a stage that I would say no, let's skip that concert because it's just too much hassle, too far away. So yeah, to come back to your question, the traveling aspect of it is important. Musicians maybe are not always convinced that they should, instead of flying for 30 minutes, they should take a train of 6 hours. So there's some work to be done there. That all starts out with meeting people personally. And when I started my work with this Dutch band, we had some funding and there was a budget for me to travel as well. So I would go to events like Jazz Ahead. I would go to festivals where I knew a lot of promoters would be. Whenever the band played, I would always go with them. That's of course also a way to get to know people and places. And then you build on that. And at a certain point there's this moment that you know enough key people, important people, they will introduce you to other people, or other people will wonder who you are because they see you on the scene and they see you're getting important maybe, or getting well known. And then it sort of evolves automatically. But it takes a long time. I think it took me, I don't know, 6 years, 8 years, long time. I think it's very important. It's really very important to get to know the network, to know each other, to talk to each other, learn from each other. It's quite essential, I think. I was also thinking about my own history, and it's actually all based on knowing people. That was how I got into it, that's how it evolved, that's how I ended up working with the musicians I work with. It all came from that. Yeah. And of course, once you know someone personally, they will actually hopefully reply to your email. You can get them on the phone. It makes life much easier. Also because it's a bit smaller. I mean, if you go to Jazz Ahead, it's as a young, new beginning agent, it's very overwhelming. So smaller initiatives are very good. Do a lot of research. online, of course. See where people play, people that you know, people that are comparable to your artists, see where they play, and have a good system where you can collect all those data, where you have a good database. Write down everything, because you think you can remember, but there will be a time that you can't. So you always have to be able to find back, when did I write to someone, when did I, stuff like that. Or how long in advance does he start booking shows, because he told me sometime. Make notes of everything. That, apart from what we already discussed, getting to know people personally, that I think is what you use as a basis to build on.